Welcome to Culture Climate, presented by STC. Company culture is complex, like trying to track down Sasquatch. We're here to dive into the belly of the beast. Join us for firsthand stories from leaders, along with transformative ideas and insights impacting organizations and people. Ready to climb it? Let the journey begin. All right, well, welcome back, everybody, to the Culture Climate Podcast. I'm your host, Ryan Brentz, and we're excited to dive in today with our guest, Lloyd Osborn from Novel Builders, based here in Dallas, Fort Worth. So welcome to the podcast.
Thank
Lloyd.
you.
Yeah,
Excited to be here.
Absolutely. We've been partnering with Novel for a few years now. And so it's been really cool to see them on their journey as a general contractor here in the Metroplex. I'm really excited to kind of dive in with your background and experience, Lloyd, and how you've seen Novel evolve over the years. And so
Sure.
To kick it off, just like I do with other clients, just want to ask you, can you tell us a little bit more about your background as it relates to organizational culture?
Yeah, organizational culture. It was kind of a quick jump into it when we started Novel. Hadn't really had a whole lot of background in organizational culture. I'd been working for two different companies prior to Novel, coming out of school, graduating from A&M, and those two companies were distinctly different from each other. They each had their own individual culture. They weren't necessarily written cultures, but there's culture A and culture B, and they were very contrasting. Both very successful in what they did, but you weren't going to take the folks from organizational A and put them in organization B. So when we started Novel, it was really just a focus of, well, who are we and what's our culture, and how do you surround yourself with people you enjoy working with?
Yeah. And you guys have been in business since 2013. And so, it's quite some time, 11 years now in the business. So can you talk about kind of how your culture has evolved at Novel Builders?
Yeah, it's been I'd compare it to almost a religious experience. There's been a lot of growth of the organization, a lot of personal growth, myself trying to understand and adapt to different folks. But, it's been life experiences that have kind of shaped and guided that over time to kind of develop and hone in our own culture. And really it's based on what values we wanted to set forth first and foremost, and surrounding yourself with people with like mindset, like values, ethics, and that kind of grew in a culture in and of itself.
Yeah, core values. That's been a theme in this podcast. Is our 15th episode. And we've heard a lot of people talk about core values. As the owner of Novel Builders, can you give some context to how you guys developed your core values at Novel?
Well, the cliche is it starts with the leader, right? And if it starts with the leader and stays the leader, it's not culture. How we developed our company's core values, and I think that moved forward to help develop our culture as an organization, is really identifying who your business unit leaders are, who the folks are who are investing themselves most into the organization. We sat down, and I kind of took a backseat for a while and let them. Now I kind of shepherded the process, right? I had to get them there in the room, had to ask them some leading questions, but then it kind of took off. And a group of folks in the organization started defining what those core values were as it mattered to them. And they were very much in alignment with each other. So it was really easy to build from that and put something behind it. So now it's not something that's handed or dictated to them. This is our core values.
Yeah.
This is what we believe in as folks of Novel.
Yeah, you mentioned being around the right group of people beforehand, which I think is so critical in all areas of your life, personal or professional. Can you speak to a little bit at how you identify people that you really want to run with, whether it's in business or your personal life?
I think there has to be alignment. For me personally, it starts with ethics, a core value system there. There's obviously got to be a likable personality and things that come with that, but it really comes down to the meat and potatoes of a person, just like the meat and potatoes of a company. And if you guys as people really click and can interface well, go through the high times and the low times together, a philosophy I have is just from observation, is you really understand who a person is when things are going really well, and you understand who a person is when things are going really bad.
Hmm.
And when things go too well, do they have time for you anymore? They moved on to the next, social network group that they're now associated to, or when times are really bad, or are they throwing you under the bus for self-preservation? So you really see who a person is in these times, and then that translates to how you do business.
Yeah.
Sometimes you have to have really hard conversations, follow the sword with a client, or an upstream client or a downstream client. So it's how you handle yourself in those different situations that those are folks I tend to gravitate towards.
Yeah. And that's a good lead into my next question about this elusive nature of company culture. I mean, you spoke to it. I mean, as I'm speaking, I'm thinking about the word culture, and it really describes like the group of people, that are part of that organization and how they show up to the workplace and respond to adversity or triumphs, or wins. And so this idea of culture, which is it's a big word that gets thrown around, but it is kind of elusive depending on the company or the organization that you're a part of. And so, how have you guys navigated kind of the cycles of your business and when it comes to company culture?
So I think culture just like anything else, it means something in and of itself, but it can be overused and it can be marketed. I think a lot of our current thoughts towards culture is more the flashbang icing on the cake. It's, well, we're a culture that likes to have fun at work. We're a culture that bring your pet to work day, or they're not sustainable things that really meld people together. Everybody loves dogs. Who doesn't
Yeah,
love a dog, right?
I had no idea.
But you don't revolve your company culture around that. I think you got to get past the icing on the cake, and you've got to define what it is, but by way of values that you are holding true as an organization, and finding people that reinforce that. So you got to define those values, and then you've got to measure yourself with those. People are going to either identify with them and be a part of it and want to be a part of it, and be part of that team, that band of brothers, so to speak, or they're not. And if you've got a culture or a group of people that enjoy working with each other and are truly trying to support each other, they're going to have personal successes there, and that's going to translate selfishly and a corporate success, right? So you've got to. We were part of that EOS, training.
Yeah.
We wanted to learn it. We wanted to absorb it, understand it, and some of the takeaways we got from that is the GWC. Do people get it? Do they want it? Do they have the capacity to do things? And I think when you start there, culture is more of a mindset, not frills. If you have people who get it, get what your business is, or what and want to be a part of that, and if they don't have all the skill sets out of the box, can they be taught it? So there's a mindset. So do they have the capacity to learn everything you want them to do and do it? So if you've got people that have that GWC package, and you put all those folks together, that starts auto generating your culture. But it has to be managed and it has to be measured, because you're going to have folks that have life distractions. Maybe they veer off from their personal life journey of GWC, and it's translating into work. And you need to be able to have kind of conversations. Say, hey, guy, this is not in alignment with our company culture. You're right. I screwed up. Okay. And maybe you've got folks that fake it and then stop making it after a while, and you've got to be able to identify that. Otherwise, you have a changing culture. You have people that are not part of that core group of values, that are sustaining that core group of values, or they start removing themselves from it. Then you start suffering cultural change, cultural drift. Not all cultural change is bad, but you need to know what it is. And if it's not per the vision of your organization, then you need to correct that.
Yeah. How do you, as an owner, keep a pulse on the culture? You mentioned some things there, but Is it more of these one-on-one conversations, or can you just walk into your office and kind of feel it? Like, can you speak to that at all? About how you kind of keep a pulse on things?
To be quite honest, on some of the things that we've dealt with as an organization, I've been completely oblivious to.
Mm,
Um, and I get blindsided because we'll have a team member. My thought is that this team members, because where I'm interfacing with them, man, they're crushing it. But how they're interfacing with perhaps other team members, they're not interacting well, and it's creating perhaps some toxicity or resentment or some adversity there. Um, so what's happened over time is open communication, where people are freely speaking about, hey, this is what I love so and so, but these are the issues we're having as team members, and then it's a sit down and talk, and maybe some of it can be mitigated, and okay, we're in alignment now, and we're going to go forward and work together as team members, and perhaps maybe there's not. Maybe through that vetting process, we find that the cultural fit needs to be a little bit different for that person, and there's a place for them that's not here. Not to say anybody's right, wrong, or indifferent, but we're all built differently. So I'd love to be able to say I walk in and I can feel the hairs raise on my arm and say, yep, that one's in alignment and that one's
yeah.
not. There has to be communication, and there has to be folks have to feel comfortable enough and empowered enough that they're willing to talk through that.
Yeah, it goes back to what you were saying at the beginning of our podcast about the ownership piece with different members of your team. Like, they're helping create the culture because they're the ones that are really defining those core values for themselves. But then the more people that have done that, then you're creating this collective feel of the organization.
Yeah, you can't dictate culture. At least I feel that you can't. Maybe there's folks that disagree, but I think it was Dwight D. Eisenhower said, "Yeah, you can't legislate morality,
Mm,
right? That comes from within a person and of themselves." Similarly, I don't feel like you can dictate your culture on folks. They're either going to have a like-minded mindset and like-minded way of interacting with folks, or they're not. So to say, okay, you're going to be working at Novel Builders, and by God, you're going to have fun, and you're going to enjoy the fact that Marcy brought her dog to work. It's just it's not gonna fly.
yeah. You talk about kind of this idea concept of like the mid-level supervisor, or like these informal leaders, or maybe they are formal leaders with the titles, but just the people that are out there carrying the message. They're propagating the right message that you as the owner and leadership just want to drive. And so I think about, you were talking about the importance of those connection points between maybe like the employee and their direct line, and that there needs to be a good connection point. I think about from a construction standpoint, like the superintendent, he kind of is like over a lot of different moving pieces, and he's got to manage and help control the job site. And so you mentioned those at the beginning, like finding good leaders that could kind of drive that culture. Is there anything that you do with them, or like how do you just really manage those relationships with those leaders?
Those would be kind of what I call business unit leaders,
Mm,
and we meet on a regular basis. And there's a lot of open dialogue and communication. Um, for the most part, emotions are left at the door. Uh, and we started about a year and a half ago through a journey. We started through the EOS process, right? It was something that was suggested to me, and I'm not a huge book reader, but if you give me a great movie to watch, I'll try to do that.
mm-hmm.
But I committed. I read the book and found that, man, it was really getting a lot of ideas and thoughts sparked off in my brain. And I said, I need to share this with the team and get the buy-in of the team, because there's something tangible here. So we did. And what happened through that experience is we had a group of folks that really kind of draw together. It became a greater team. But also what happened is a couple of the folks were vetted out, and it really highlighted that we weren't on the same sheet of music.
Mm.
There started being some cultural differences with not very many, but just one or two key folks. And as a result of that, they're no longer part of the organization. But what that helped do is galvanize the folks that were there, and now that regular and consistent conversation. What's great about it, what I find fun about it, is there's now lateral um, uh, accountability. So someone's not shy to walk into my office. You know what? We haven't done X, Y, and Z here lately, and you were the one preaching how valuable this was. So I'm going to hold you accountable. That needs to happen, and you need to get back on that. Okay. So it's kind of brought down some barriers of this hierarchy or thought of hierarchy, and it's really put together this thought of this notion that we're a team, and we're all team members. So meeting on a consistent basis for much of the time, it was a weekly. Then we kind of dropped back to quarterly, and now I've gotten some feedback that, hey, quarterly is not enough. They're missing the weekly meetings. So that really helps us stay in sync with each other. And really, I've seen my own personal growth, and I've seen the growth of the organization from just growing from each other as this group of 5 or so folks.
Accountability has been a term that's been brought on the show quite a bit. And I think it's a challenge because you have different characters or members of your team that may or may not respond differently. They got different personalities. I think accountability, it speaks to another thing that you brought up, which is focus. And we know that in business, there's just so much you can be distracted by. And so can you talk about your journey there when it comes to, focusing your efforts so that everyone's aware of kind of the direction that you're going?
Well, it's going to be hard for me I've got 15 things and you want to be focused. When it comes to business, I find that, well, one of my previous employers, one of their struggles was the business owner got distracted with other things, and it started degrading from his effectiveness as a general contractor. He was part of this, part of that, and he put people in charge that weren't treating that business as though it was theirs. And it reminds me of a conversation that I had with I'll call him a mentor, a good drywall friend of mine years ago, before we even started Novel. And he sits me down, makes me drive to Austin, even though we're both from Dallas. He wanted to have dinner in Austin. So we drive to Austin, and he looks at me and goes, "Why do you want to be a general contractor?" And I don't know. That's all I know how to do. And he goes, "Well, why don't you pump porta-johns?" Jeff, I'm not a porta-john pumper. I don't want to pump porta-johns. He goes, "Well, don't you think you're a smart guy? Don't you think you could be the best pumping porta-johns?" I'm like, "Yeah, but what's your point, man?" He goes, "My point is you find the one good thing, the one thing that you can be the best at. Focus your time and attention on that. Keep honing that and be the best at it, and you'll be successful." He goes, "I got a buddy who's a millionaire pumping porta-johns. Nobody likes the smell. Nobody likes doing it, but he loves it because he's got a house nicer than mine, car's nicer than mine, and he's rolling in the dough. But he's stayed laser focused on what he can be the best at." So as a general contractor, there are areas where we can get distracted. Hey, why don't we, start a flooring company, concrete company, or get into development, or branch off into these other things. And, you just got to refocus yourself as what can we be the best at? Then inside your organization, also focus on your people. What can they be the best at, and try to put the right butt in the right seat? Because asking your business development guy to go be a superintendent on a job site is going to be a recipe for disaster. So it's that focus of putting the right butt in the right seat, the square peg in the square hole. I think that's what all of this is on an organizational standpoint.
Mm. Yeah, and that affects the culture, right? Because from an individual standpoint, if they're not in the right seat, it's just a matter of time before, some many emotions can come to the surface. And so being aware of that. And then from a business perspective, I mean, what are you really focusing on? Because, you can only be really great at something that you put your time and energy towards. And in this society of distraction, I mean, you're going to be spinning your wheels if you're just catching the next best thing. And so I really appreciate you mentioning that. And I think that helps when it comes to going back to accountability. You know, if you can focus on what you deem as the most important activities that lead to success, and you're focused on that and you're accountable to that, then you should get just, traction. And if you don't, then okay, at a certain amount of time, how do we pivot?
I ask people what their why is. If you've got, if you let's say you have two team members, right, and there's some emotion, or maybe there's a little bit of pride that gets involved in a disagreement. At the end of the day, you've got to ask, you got to sit them down. And you say, what was your why? I'm reading this email. You're firing back and forth. Things are getting heated, escalated, and your ending point was a jab. Did you have a good why or a bad why? Well, I wanted to get that in. It made me feel better about myself. Well, what's your ultimate goal? Again, if you want to be the best one at pumping out porta johns, what's his why? Well, his why is going to buy this truck. He's going to find his efficiencies in his business plan, trying to get from point A to point B. If you've got team members and emotions or things are getting involved, de-escalating that with what's your why? Did you try to have a successful win in this situation? Are you staying laser focused to your core values? Are you holding yourself accountable to the win, or are you getting distracted with trying to one up your team member? And I think that it helps you've got to have solid core values as an organization, as a person, because that's what you can start measuring what your why is against.
Yeah, I love that. Because that's what, when I talk about core values, and it's kind of a similar idea or term as like culture. It's like this, we know it's important because that's where we're talking about it. And there's so much that's written about it and discussed on it, but it's like, how do you take something from theory to application? And so right there, that example of like an email, I mean, that's taking it to application. Like, what is my why? You would hope for, if they're operating within an organization, it's to align with the organization's core values. And so as a leader, if I can quickly pinpoint a behavior that does not align with a core value and somehow hold them accountable, whatever your unique approach is as a leader, I mean, that's a way of taking this idea and concept of core values from theory, what's on on t-shirts or on the wall at your office, to application and calling it out for good or for bad. But I think that's so important that we hold that accountability of these key concepts that should be really the root and the heart of our organizations and us as people. If we're not operating from our core values, and that's why I love EOS and core values, because this applies just to your personal life so much too. It's not just organizational.
Absolutely.
There's parallels with the success of you personally and organizationally. Do you have any other thoughts? Like that's another question I had about just how do you feel a strong company culture contributes to both individual and collective success?
So, if you define your culture and you've got a strong culture, what is an organization really? An organization is a group of people producing a service or a widget, right? So the organization is people. If you've got strong people, you got strong culture that's got strong values. Using it in a building sense, since I'm a contractor, it's like blocks. Strong blocks, consistent blocks makes a strong wall. And if those folks interact well with each other, it's like bricks building up a wall. You've got a strong wall with no holes in it. However, if you've got mainly strong bricks and strong folks, and you've got some folks that aren't in alignment with your culture, with your set of values, you've got holes in the wall. And that's going to result in inefficiency and unsuccessful interactions at work, and people individually will feel like they're not being as successful as they should be. And but where they're successful, the organization is going to be successful. So if you've got consistent folks, but they're all bad folks, or not ethically grounded or things like that. You still have consistency, but you're not getting the success that maybe the organization has defined for itself. So having those folks that are and it's, the onus is and the accountability kind of goes back to leadership too, of being able to maintain the fact that or as much as your ability, having a consistent group of const, consistent cultural people that can work well with each other so that you can afford them the opportunity to find their success at work, and the organization has success at work. I find, folks, and you see it in articles all the time, folks tend to stay at organizations more where they feel a cultural fit, where they find a level of success, where they get personal identification. They're gratified personally for what they do more than jumping ship for, a small salary bump. At least that's the folks that you hope you have in your organization. Well, why is that? It's because they get identity with what they're doing and they enjoy who they're doing it with. That's why I feel like the culture of an organization is the meat and potatoes. I've never heard of a person that left a company because they stopped having bring your dog to a work day.
Mm-hmm.
It was always about the people that they were working with, whether or not they could invest themselves into that organization and felt like that organization was, in contrast, investing itself into them.
Yeah, they feel connected to it. There's a connection point that they feel really strong that aligns with their identity as a person. That's great. Kind of going back to the idea of theory to application, can you highlight any specific strategy or initiative that you found particularly effective for novel builders?
Yeah, the strategy is and it's evolved somewhat over time. We've only been around for 11 years. It seems like longer sometimes, shorter.
Yeah.
But what's been helping us gain traction and grow as an organization has been not just a focus on, we're going to hire some qualified folks. This is a superintendent. He's got the resume. He's got the experience. Boom. We have focused more not on qualifications, but also what is this person's cultural makeup? Are they going to be a good fit here? Are they going to do they have a similar mindset? So that vetting process has been more recent for us. I mean, I'd love to say we've been doing that for 11 years, but we haven't. But what we're finding is really getting past the superficial, can this person do this job and meet this job requirement, to, is this person someone who we feel like we can work with for the next 15 years and we want to retire here, and is going to be that person on a personal level we want to hang out with, and is going to share our core values more than just our core business product that we're delivering. That has, I would say, we're not the company that we were 5 years ago because of that. And I've seen an improvement in morale and intercompany relationships, where it's not just all right, I'm going to show up at 8 and leave at 5. Now folks are interacting with people socially outside of work, and it has fostered that more family dynamic. This is your novel family versus this is your novel workplace.
Yeah.
So, that was kind of a long-winded way to say it's really focusing on the culture of the person and trying to hold that accountable within the organization. That's really helped us grow that.
That makes sense. Because I think about it, if you're just really trying to get off the ground, you're trying to look for someone that's the most qualified. But as you build something, you build a team, it starts taking shape. Its culture starts taking shape because of the people that you've brought on. And you realize, okay, these are the type of people, I want more of these that really can integrate well with my current team. And so that starts to be the kind of the benchmark of someone that you want to bring on.
And it's fun. It's infectious, because then you start seeing folks mature in your organization, and you start delegating some of those decision-making abilities to them, and you you start feeling confident that it's going to be in alignment with your own personal, like, hey, they made the same decision I would have made. There's some personal validation or gratification out of that, knowing that, hey, this is not just me anymore. This is a group of folks that are really feeling passionate about the mission, the organization that they're part of. They're making decisions, choosing who to put on the team and who not to put on the team, because they know that it's going to be consistent with the culture and team that not only you're trying to build, but they're trying to build.
Yeah. Yeah. I love the idea of it just continuing to, it's almost like an exponential growth that's happening. It takes time to get there, but over time you start kind of multiplying. There's a great book by Liz Wiseman called Multipliers, and it talks about this concept of you're just creating more and more uh, formal and informal leaders of the culture and the environment that's just kind of driving this culture of what you represent at your company. And that's exciting, especially as a leader. I was at a conference a couple of weeks ago, and they were talking about the importance of finding your replacement or knowing who your replacement is, and being intentional about leaning into them and ensuring that they be prepared if tomorrow they need to step into a seat. So I just love that idea and concept. Well, great, Lloyd. Really, as we wrap up, you've learned a lot, I'm sure, throughout your career, but with 11 years at Novel Builders, knowing what you know now, what advice or idea would you give other leaders as they're trying to navigate this climb that is cultivating company culture?
Well, for me, it's define what it is, because every person's unique, right? And every organization, in theory, is develops its own culture. So you need to take a moment and really step back and define what those core values are, what that culture is that you're wanting to foster, and so that way you can compartmentalize that and make that a bar mark to measure yourself against. Secondly, uh, you've got to have a group of folks that are like-minded, that will buy into that and support it, and you've got to measure how you are performing against that defined culture and defined set of values. And there's got to be feedback, and you've got to have folks, and yourself included, that can be held accountable and not be emotional about what you're hearing, and make decisions for the good of the organization. And sometimes you're not going to make your mark, and you need to be reminded of that, and vice versa. So define it, measure yourself against it, and then it needs to be communicated to the organization as a whole. Because if it's just you as the leader, or if it's you and the leader and a handful of folks who are trying to lead the organization, and it's not getting disseminated out to everyone in your organization, then they're not going to know what they're trying to be a part of, and you're going to struggle with trying to get alignment. And, hey, this is our company culture. Well, how do I know that? So that has to be a regular basis, and that's something that, quite honestly, I don't feel like we even do enough. Is we spend time saying what our core values are, supporting those, measuring ourselves internally with all of our metrics, but how much of that are we regularly disseminating back out to everyone in the organization, to give them opportunity to further jump on board? Maybe they want to be a future leader, or get more leadership responsibility in certain things, and be a bigger asset to the organization. So I think that's the struggle. Is we're a company of 30 folks. I'd say we've got a core of about 6 or 7. But man, I'd want all 30 folks to have just as much passion and drive to support and be a part of that core value. So that's the journey that we're on. I've seen us improve as an organization. We're not where we want to be, but as we continue to drive at that, I can't help but think that it's going to make us a better organization, and other folks can hopefully learn from some of those thoughts and feedback as well.
Yeah, and it's what you're saying. It's a journey. I mean, no one's arrived. I mean, a lot of the stuff that you're talking about today, it really resonates with me here at STC, because we have our own challenges, but we have a desire to continue up this trajectory up the mountain, and we're just trying to really pinpoint sightings of what makes strong company culture, and just continue to work towards that imperfectly. You know, the twists and the turns, the peaks and the valleys of the mountain, but as long as you know who you are from a core value standpoint, you're moving in the right direction. And so I really appreciate you speaking to some just solid components of culture, but also just your own challenges. And I know those aren't unique to the audience. And so thanks for speaking light into those. And we're just so honored to partner with you guys over at Novel Builders. We look forward to continuing to grow together and learning together.
Yeah, you guys have been solid. It's been a great journey with STC. You guys have likewise taught my folks. And what's great about it is, I feel I may be out of turn here, but I feel like there's some mindset alignment. There's some EOS stuff that we've swapped back and forth, and once that kind of started resonating, it's like, man, it's a no-brainer that we're working together.
Yeah.
And you guys have challenged our folks, and it's been great to have a partner like you guys in the industry.
Likewise. Yeah, we're really appreciative of it, and it's always exciting when you feel that the meat and potatoes, there's alignment there, and if we can agree on that, then we can get through challenges that are thrown our way. And so really appreciate you, Lloyd, being on the show. Really enjoyed this conversation, and look forward to seeing you out there.
Absolutely, man.
So thanks, Lloyd, and God bless.
You too, man.